Yeah, thank you so much. It was great listening to you and your opinions about the code. It is so important. I remember our first meeting about the Murad Code, and when we discussed and how it's gonna look like, and then I came home and I just imagined the code like based on our discussion, and I was like, oh my God, this is gonna change survivor's life forever. Because when you go through something and then someone come up and tells you that we can change that for others, that's the most joyful thing for me, when I can prevent something from happening to others that happened to me. It's something that's so meaningful. At Nadia's initiative, we have fully incorporated the code into our protection work and advocacy work. We have trained our team fully on the staff on the code. A basic first step that we have taken is we make sure that documentation and interactions with survivors are in their own native language. So we do not document or share their stories without fully informed consent. Mm-hmm. And I believe without that, it's not a, they need to know what you are going to do with their stories. I know from my experience when I was living in IDP camps with, my sisters, my friends, my fellow survivors, and we were, asked to sign on so-called consent forms, and they were in different languages that we couldn't understand. We were signed on it. Survivors were not, aware of what was the difference between talking to a legal documenters or a aid workers. They didn't know the difference. They were not, informed about all the differences, how their stories will be used or not. But most of the times they had to share their stories like I did, because we needed help. And we were under that, impression that if we share our stories over and over again, we will access support and justice. And unfortunately, documenters didn't correct that assumption that, survivors really saw a benefit from telling their stories. When I see my friends who at the very beginning shared their stories with, reporters, aid workers, legal documenters in the camp, and now when we talk about that experience, they have stopped to share their stories. And when I, remind them about these interviews, they're like, please don't remind me of it. They don't even want to remember it, because it's a very, difficult thing for them, that they were so vulnerable. They were asked very specific questions. And I think you can ask a survivor, how are you doing? And you can still get what you want. It's not about, very personal questions that my definition for the Murad Code is that if you adopt the code, you are simply putting survivors' well-being first. And that is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, I certainly wish that documenters were following the standards laid out in the Murad Code when I was first telling my story. Because many testimonial and journalistic questions can be heavily re-traumatizing. And, I want it to be different for the next survivors who are bravely sharing their stories, coming out and talking about their experiences.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nadia. Thanks for that.